And welcome back to the HE Enable podcast. This is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. I'm Kath, and this week I am joined by Alicia. They are a student at the University of Lancashire studying for a BA in Applied Community and Social Care Studies. They're returning to uni after over 15 years away, and as they have returned, have become massively involved in student voice through various means, which I'm sure we'll chat about. And in fact, they've just been elected as the student rep for governance at Lancashire SU, which is, again, we'll get into it, but kind of an SU president role. And Alicia obviously has lots of ideas for the year ahead. I cannot wait to have this conversation. We had the little pre-show chat yesterday, and I know we're going to get through a lot, but I know it's also going to be, we're going to gain a lot as well. So, pleasure to have you on the show today, Alicia. I cannot wait to get started. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me on.
Oh, no, absolutely my pleasure. Obviously, as I said, I know who you are. We've had a chat. But please could you introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your background in higher education?
Yeah, of course. So I'm 41. I'm a mature student. I originally attended what was then UCLan. It's the same university, it's just changed names. When my son was a little baby, I was doing social policy and English literature back then. I had to drop out. I was unfortunately very mentally ill, and the combination of that and a young baby at home was just too much. But I'm back now. They can't get rid of me that easily. Basically, I was helping my son to apply for his degree. He's at University of Manchester at the moment, and I was jealous, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. It's time. So yes.
Amazing. And we're somehow keeping the Manchester link going through the show. I don't know if you've seen recently, but it's been a lot of Manchester people.
Yeah, they get around, I think.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. Actually, very strong on disability. But we're keeping that thread going. But also, we're bringing in a new uni. I know University of Lancashire as UCLan, because that was a relatively recent change, right? Past couple of years?
Yeah, so I believe it was last year. So I'm just at the end of my first year now. And when I very first arrived, everyone was in a bit of confusion about the name of the institution I was actually enrolling into. So that's how recent it is.
Yeah, so it used to be the University of Central Lancashire. I'm aware that we keep using acronyms, but it's UCLan. It was UCLan.
Preston Poly is, as everyone calls it in Preston.
Oh, is it a 92 uni?
It is, yeah.
Oh, very good for trampolining, actually. I used to compete against, well, I didn't, I wasn't very good, but my teammates used to compete against UCLan. And
amazing.
Yeah, very solid for sport, actually, from what I can hear.
I'm not a sporty person, even before I became physically disabled. But, good on them. I wish them the best.
Yeah. So, obviously, you've kind of alluded to it there. If you're comfortable saying, how did your disabilities, neurodivergence impact your experience of higher education? This can be from either now or when you entered uni before.
Yep. So I've got quite a large and varied collection of disabilities. I'm neurodivergent, I'm ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic. I also have a quite severe mental illness. Luckily, that's under control at the moment. But bipolar. Last time I was at uni, one of the reasons I had to drop out was I kept getting sectioned, so I was really unwell. However, over the last year, I've also developed some physical problems. So I've also now got ME, CFS, and fibromyalgia, and cataracts in my eyes and migraines. So it's all go. But how it's affected my higher education is, well, for a start, I had to drop out first time round, unfortunately. I've always been someone who's really enjoyed education, not so much the act of being in school, for example, but that's what you get for being neurodivergent and queer in the 90s. But I just really love learning, and I was always desperate to get back to uni. There's so many times I've attempted to do, say, Open University, things like that, and just not managed to quite get there. This time I was determined it was going to be different. And luckily, so far, it really has. It's been an absolute amazing time I've had this year, mostly.
Oh, that's really positive and really great to hear. I technically have an ME CFS, like I went to the clinic and they was like, you're tired, there's nothing we can do. But I think it's relatively mild and affects, if it is indeed what I have, affects me a lot less than other people on migraines as well. And so technically it's a lived experience I have, but like kind of not really. I was just like, I'm not a wheelchair user, which I'm aware that you now use a wheelchair. I'm just pretty sleepy.
I'm an ambulant wheelchair user, so I have my power chair that I use pretty much every time I leave the house now. And that has absolutely opened my life up again, because I found I was starting to, almost without realizing, I was starting to restrict myself and not do things, because I was thinking, I can't walk that far, I can't do that, I'm going to be too tired. Even in the coffee break in lectures and seminars, when the rest of my classmates would all go and get a brew, I'd stay in the classroom, because I knew if I was to go all the way to the coffee shop and back to the classroom, I wouldn't be able to engage with the rest of the class because of my combination of situations. If I get even slightly tired, I can't see. Well, I can see, but I can't focus enough to read. Yeah. So it's a combination of the fatigue and the cataracts means that my eyes just won't focus. Now, I have sat through lectures not being able to see what I'm meant to be looking at. And I have sat there, trying desperately not to throw up the room, spinning and all this, just determined to sit through the lecture. I do feel I have this thing, and I've heard it from a lot of people with chronic illness, that I experience symptoms that for other people, they will be in A&E. And I'm there like, oh, I'll just grit my teeth and get through it, because if I did that, I'd be in A&E all the time. You know what I mean?
Like your bar just adjusts completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have a smartwatch and it keeps telling me that I'm exercising when I'm literally sat there. I don't know what.
Oh, is that your heart rate's up and it's just,
Yeah.
oh, that's yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am under cardiology and it's been investigated, but it's at the point where if I wasn't under cardiology, I would be going to A&E about it.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
But no, I'm just kind of sat there watching TV going, oh, that's weird. I wonder if I'm having a heart attack or not.
Very intense episode of Gogglebox. Like,
yeah.
I mean, one thing I really want to emphasize before we really get into the meat of things is just how much you have that love of learning. We had this conversation right before we hit record. You trained to be a plumber, like, because you just wanted to learn something and a skill, and like, that is just dedication.
I was getting to the point where I think I might be ready to start looking back into education. But obviously signing up for a degree with all the financial impacts is quite a big thing to do. So I was looking at the local adult college, looking at the courses they offered, speaking to my mum and thinking, oh, I might do, English literature, I might do an art history course, something like that. And my mum said, well, I want a new bathroom, why don't you train to be a plumber? I thought, well, I don't know, why not? And I actually had an amazing time and it was really fun. I never intended to do it as a full career. I never had a great ambition to be a plumber, but I had a great time. Shout out to Preston College and the plumbing course.
Oh, I tell you what, so I have family from the Midlands. I obviously did my bachelor's in Yorkshire. And so that is the most northern thing I've ever heard. I just fancy a bathroom. Can you just pop it in, please, love? It's all right, yeah, I guess.
Well, the other one she suggested was dog grooming, because she has a dog that she has to take to the groomer. I'm like, Mum, I
don't know why, but that feels so quintessentially northern to me, and I kind of love it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was fun, and it was fun to do something a bit different, because whenever I've studied and within any kind of interests I've had, it's always been more the social policy or the kind of arts and literature side. My first Saturday job was on a building site as a teenager. That's just because my dad's a builder, and I think every kid of a builder has a similar story of being paid to make the brews and so on. I'm not actually a very practical person, so it was very good.
True. I wonder if though, having that kind of practical re-entry, I guess, into education helped, because it can be very intellectually intensive just in terms of sitting there and thinking and using all that brain power. Do you think that kind of helped ease you in back to studies?
Yep, and strangely, this could sound quite odd, because I've always been a very thinky, ready, booky person. I actually found some of the plumbing course quite challenging compared to my university work. And it helped teach me to almost that resilience. There is a kind of, I don't know, the gifted kid thing of when you're at school, you don't really have to study.
Yeah.
So when you get to university and all of a sudden there's work that you actually have to try hard at, you don't know what to do. I am not a talented plumber, I'll tell you that now. But just gritting my teeth and getting on with it and passing the course was amazing, and it showed me I could do anything.
Oh, that's amazing. We're going to pivot back to higher education stuff now, because I just wanted to pull us on this tangent, because I looked through your LinkedIn again before the recording and I was like, hang on a second, that's a plumbing qualification. After meeting yesterday, that feels a bit rogue for you, but I'm really glad that we touched on that. We're going to pop back to your uni journey now. So you obviously went to University of Lancashire twice. First time is when you initially entered uni, and then we'll get into this conversation later, I'm sure, but dropped out at the start of your second year, took a break for, we think about 16, 17 years is what we've ballparked. So you have quite a broad range of experience, but at the same institution, which I think is quite rare. So I just wanted to ask what your experience was like accessing support through your uni journey.
So when I was at UCLan the first time, my only diagnosis, was dyslexia and dyspraxia at the time, and they were putting my mental illness down to some kind of postnatal psychosis type situation. Looking back, it's definitely bipolar, and it very much does fit bipolar, but at the time we didn't know. So I met with a mentor, and the study skills mentor was in person, because I didn't have internet in my house, and that wasn't like unusual at the time. I think, about half of people had it in the house. So I went down often with the baby in the pram to meet someone at UCLan, but I still had a study skills mentor. I had a dictaphone to record lectures, and there was a thing that I did have to ask every lecturer for permission, and I had a form they had to sign before I was allowed to record them. I know there has been a bit of pushback from lecturers at the moment with recording lectures, but we don't have that form anymore.
Yeah, so I had to record lectures, and it was, at least at the unis I attended, I mean, I did most of my bachelor's in COVID, but it was very much you can record and you have the right to. It would be nice if you let us know, and definitely don't distribute it. And then there's the whole recording debate, which is a separate thing. But yeah, that is so variable depending on the uni and what their thoughts on it are. York is an opt-out system. Oxford's an opt-in, for example, on whether lectures are recorded. I know it's like different across the country.
Yeah, so my lecturers have all been lovely. I've been very lucky on that one. And I have told them, I'm recording this lecture just to let you know. I feel it's polite apart from anything else.
Yeah.
But I don't tell at the beginning of every lecture. I just let them know at the beginning of the module. I have heard of people who've had it refused, point blank. And I have heard, and I've not got many details on this, it's something to do with the lecturers' unions advising them to refuse to allow it to be recorded. I don't know what's going on there.
There's a big thing around the freedom of speech debate, and also I know some people have, I once heard of recordings being refused on the grounds of actually many reasons. One of them is attendance for in-person, which is kind of inherently ableist. It is inherently ableist, but we want to get people in the classroom, and that's how we're going to do it. Sometimes it's because people don't want their work out there, and that's a whole other debate. I think there's, as I've sat in so many of these meetings, there is valid arguments on both sides, but accessibility is a very big one and that is very, very important.
That's it. I definitely think a conversation needs to be had there, because the students and the lecturers are all aiming at the same goal.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be in opposition on this. I'm sure there's a solution out there. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there is one. I have heard as well of people on some courses where they're using case studies particularly health, social care, social work, the lecturers are saying because of GDPR it can't be recorded. Now, I personally don't think that applies, but I have heard that has happened. I was actually told when I started recording that I would have to press pause if any of the students were talking, because in our course, we tend to share a lot of our personal experience. And I was told I need to either press pause when people are talking about personal experience or go back and delete the personal experience bits. So, yeah, there is that as well. It's an absolute minefield. It's not as simple as just pressing record, unfortunately.
No, and I think that's a lot of, well, we'll get into student policy later because I'm aware we want to cover the basis first, but we're both very politically active student voice people, at least when I'm at uni. I'm not at the moment, but you know, it's something we both do, and you see people running SU campaigns or coming to their student union being like, why can't we do this? And it's like, well, it is a minefield and it's really not as easy as you think. And I spent 2 years like basically working directly below the academic officer at York, and we both ran uncontested in our campaigns in the second term somehow. Like I remember I would sit there and read the SU website, mainly just to inform myself for voting. And some of them were like, oh, that is not feasible. They're going to have a real shock if they get elected.
I will say, though, in contrast as well, that I have found within student politics and within higher education, there is also a tendency to overcomplicate matters that can be quite simple.
Oh, yeah.
So one example is the lift was broken in our student union for about 10 days or so. There is another lift, but it's intended for staff, so it's kind of behind an unmarked door, so most students won't know it's there. I happen to know it's there because I used to work at the SU, and I'm like, why is there no sign here to tell people? And I kept asking staff, like, you know, what's going on? And they're like, oh, well, it's really complicated because they have to, like, get any sign approved by this person and so on. I literally went and printed out a sign myself in the library that said, this lift is broken, there's another lift over there, and then at the bottom put, I've printed this sign out myself because the SU has not done it for over a week. Later that day, signs were up from the SU. Now, I don't know if this is coincidence, you know what I mean? But yeah, it does show that if you can't do it perfectly, it's better to at least do something, because the way our SU is set out, when I originally asked a member of staff, I pretended I didn't know just to see what they'd say. I asked a member of staff in the cafe, like, how do I get to the other entrance? They suggested I go all the way around the outside of the building in the rain. And it is very long because it's like a group of 3 buildings attached together.
Oh, and you have to go all the way around the perimeter and...
Yeah, so it would be a very long journey just to get to the front of the building. When there was a lift, it was just behind a door.
Huh.
So, yeah.
We're going to get ourselves back on topic now because we will both talk about student governance for hours. And also, like, I think it's a nice segue because you've alluded to accessibility there. Did you encounter any obstacles during your experience of higher education? Did you overcome them? And if so, how?
So I've been relatively lucky in that the most I've had to do is point things out. I've not had much of a fight myself. However, I was originally, last academic year, employed by my students' union as a community organiser. Now, that is an unelected role because at our students' union, we don't have full-time sabbatical reps anymore. Started last year.
Not a decision I personally agree with. We'll tell the listeners why we don't think it's a good decision in a second.
Yeah. But essentially, this role was organising students. Originally, I didn't have disabled students with one of my groups. Someone else did. She had to leave. So I took over disabled students. Within a couple of months, I'd quit just, I don't know, ableism within the system. And I will clarify, I don't think any one person is bad at the SU at all. I think they do all have their hearts in the right place.
Yeah,
absolutely. I do think the new system is inherently going to exclude certain groups of students even more. And one of those groups is disabled students. They had a student assembly, which was originally intended, we were going to hold a vote on what the priorities for the student union would be over the next year. Originally, you were only going to be able to vote if you turned up to this in-person meeting on one campus. We are a multi-campus university. One campus in the evening. There was no hybrid option. I raised concerns about students with kids. How are you meant to do that? They said, well, they can bring the kids if they're quiet. This meeting was held at bedtime. I don't know if these people have ever met a baby or a toddler or a young child. They would not be quiet in that situation. Also, we have a lot of commuter students as well. So a lot of my classmates rush home to pick up the kids from school in, say, Blackburn. Why would they then jump back on a bus with the kids to come to a meeting at the SU when we know we have low engagement? We know because the students don't see the point. They don't see the point in engaging with the SU. Eventually, there was a bit of trouble. They couldn't find a BSL interpreter.
Yeah.
So because that got to the point of being an access issue that they could no longer deny, they then had to also offer the option to vote online. But before then, I'd said, look, you can't be only listening to people who can make it to one meeting in person. I was told if people care enough, they'll come. And I think that just shows what the problem is within an institution that assumes that everyone is able to just drop everything and make it to a meeting, which is not the case for so many reasons, not just access. There are so many reasons. People have jobs, people commute, people, So, yeah, then when they held the vote, one of the options for what could have been a priority for the SU was access, that people were voting on whether or not the SU should work on. And the first example that they gave as an example of what needs to be sorted about access. Now, I'm queer. I love a pride flag. The first example they gave of an access problem was that we need to have lanyards with pride flags on. Now, bearing in mind, I, as an organiser, have been hearing stories of students not being evacuated during fire alarms.
Wheelchair users, right?
Wheelchair users, yeah. Deaf students not getting vibrating alarms from under the pillows in accommodation and things like that. These are real, we're going beyond even reasonable adjustments here. We're talking life and death risk. I will clarify, I think both those things have now been sorted.
Good.
But it just shows that, we're on a completely different level than pride lanyards at this point.
Yeah.
And so students were really, really angry about this, including me. And I got to the point where I just decided I can no longer take a wage for standing there telling students, if you vote on this, you're going to get listened to, because we had no evidence to show for that. I've looked back in minutes of meetings before I got to the SU, and students have been raising the same issues for years. I know people who were at UCLan in the 90s who were campaigning for disability rights around the time the Disability Discrimination Act came out, and they were having the same problems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I want to ask, I feel like that stuff you've all said very concisely, and I'm gonna leave that at that. I think you've kind of said everything that needs to be said, but while I'm asking about obstacles, I know that you're a very SU oriented person, and I think that's very good. Have you had any experiences with the Central Uni as well? Have you had anything there? Has that been all right? How's that been?
So I've actually not had that many problems with myself. Like I said, the only annoying thing I've had is that I've had to constantly be reminding lecturers, oh, can you just, sorry to mention it again. Oh, sorry, can you just blah, 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 blah. Things like putting slides on the intranet thing in advance. Just simple things like that should be happening anyway. They should happen for every student, but people like me rely on that. And just having to remind people. Now, I genuinely think that the lecturers are just busy and it's just slipping their minds. And because we know the disability, to get back into student politics, the disability awareness training for staff is not mandatory.
Yeah.
So, when you start a new job, you have all these online modules you have to complete. There is no module on disability there. There is a module, but it is not mandatory. A friend of mine did a freedom of information request, and the amount of staff that have done that training is tiny. There was one for general disabilities, and then they're going down to specific disabilities, such as there's one on mobility, one on hearing We have quite a lot of deaf students at our university, and various things like that. We're getting down to like 12 members of staff out of the thousands there that have actually done that course. And it's a very short course. And I don't think these awareness trainings solve the problem at all. But it's a start.
Yeah.
It's a very good start, because I don't think staff are aware that it's a legal responsibility to provide the reasonable adjustments. I think there is a bit of a impression that it's kind of a nice to have. It's a, oh, we'll do this because we're nice people. And I'm not saying they're not nice people, but whether or not they're nice people, they do need to do it because it's a legal requirement. But I genuinely think staff aren't aware of this, because the training isn't there for them. It's not individual staff's fault, I don't think, at all, because if you don't know, how will you know you don't know?
I interviewed Anna, as we record this, about an hour ago. As the show goes, a week ago. And I had a really positive experience through uni, given the circumstances. And one thing was, and we had a conversation about this, and we don't think it was the main or the only reason, but they were in quite small departments and very like close-knit communities, and got really, really good support as a result. Do you think it's just because one of the reasons that, from your view, I guess the university is struggling so much is just that staff to student ratio right now? Because I know that there's a lot of cuts in the sector, and there's a lot of kind of not so nice things going on with funding that has been impacting, say, the amount of staff student ratio and staff workload, especially, that even Katie mentioned when she came on the show, and a lot of considerations there. Do you think it's like part of that bigger picture thing as well?
Yeah, and I do kind of suspect that we have a really good relationship with our lecturers, but in our class, I think there's 13 registered on my year for my course entirely, and some people just don't attend. So most classes have 6 to 8 people in the room. So we are quite a close-knit group. And I think that has meant that not only has it been easier for me to speak up and ask for my adjustments, it's also been easier for the lecturers to keep track. The stories I'm hearing from maybe the more popular courses, say English literature, things like that, the massive courses, that they're struggling a bit more. Again, yeah, I think you're right. I think it is numbers. One lecturer in a room full of, 100 students in a massive lecture is going to have a harder time than a room full of 8 students. That's just, maths.
I mean, if anyone's interested in learning about the experience of lecturers, Katie's episode from about 3 weeks back at this point is a really, really good example. She's a lecturer at Manchester, super active in like these kind of disability and neurodiversity advocacy spaces, but also I think does lecture quite big groups, and like sometimes reading support plans can be a lot, and we chat about that there. So if that's something that people are really interested in, I recommend they go kind of check that out.
I did have an interesting experience recently. We ran a student-led conference around lived experience.
Okay.
Absolutely great. But I was speaking at this conference, and the lecture theatre we used, while it was billed as accessible, it was accessible for a wheelchair user to sit at the back of the room and watch the lecture. The minute I tried to get to the stage, it was down some steps and then up some steps onto the stage. The way to get round would have been to go all the way around and in through a fire exit.
Ooh.
In order to speak. Because I am ambulant, I pointed this out as part of what I was saying, and I chose to walk down with my stick just really slowly and carefully. Not everyone's going to have that option. And what does that show on a symbolic level? That we see disabled people are capable of being students, fair enough, at the back of the room. Why don't we see disabled people as being capable of having anything to say on the stage?
No, absolutely. And that shouldn't be happening.
No.
We've got a whole section on SUs coming up in a sec. So while I have you on this bit of the episode, do you have anything else you want to add about the nature of your studies or the uni, or do you want to just dive into student politics?
I mean, just a really quick thing, because I do think it's relevant across all of this, is universities are different. Every university has a different student body, a different culture. I actually think a massive strength of my university is the huge variety of students we have, because we are a widening participation uni. In my class, there's one 18-year-old. You know what I mean? We have a really, really small amount of your stereotypical student. We do have them, you know, and they're great. They add a lot to the community, but they're not a majority in our university at all. Particularly because I'm studying a community and social care studies, is very kind of lived experience enhanced. That I think that really helps the course. That we have such a massive variety in the room that we can be like, oh yeah, I've actually experienced that. Oh, please tell you stuff. You know, I do think that's something that kind of gets left behind a little bit when people are talking about different unis, different, whether how prestigious they are, what are the ratings, blah 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 blah. I think it's not as simple as that.
No.
And I do think it's something I would say to anyone, particularly anyone who's faced barriers of whatever kind, whether it's disability or anything. When you're looking at what university to go to, have a look at how they cope with non-traditional students, and also actually speak to some students as well is what I'd recommend, because unfortunately what is in the brochure does not always translate to what actually happens on the ground.
I want to add to that as well, because I went to Russell Group and then Oxbridge. I definitely have a twinge of elitism in me, because I think otherwise I wouldn't have that educational trajectory. Even if you don't think the smaller unis are going to be for you, there's still research you can do for the big unis and the Oxbridges, and go contact people, go do everything. Like, that won't change regardless of institution. And I think no matter what your journey, absolutely, from every single uni, like go check it out. Like, I'm a big fancy uni person, but like that, you know, I have friends who went to small unis, and obviously you're doing a lot of stuff where you are as well. It's such a valid thing to do, and I think it's one of the reasons I love the show, is that you get that lived experience that you wouldn't necessarily get in a brochure.
Exactly. And I think my son's at Manchester, which is Russell Group, and he's telling me stories of his university experience, and it is quite different as a teenager in halls at Russell Group to me as a mature student at University of Lancashire, UCLan, whatever.
At a post 92.
Yeah. But there's also things that link us together. We're still students, we're still studying a degree. Yeah, I think it gets simplified a little bit too much, of like, these are the good universities, these are the not so good universities. I don't think it's that simple. There are definitely ways in which some universities are stronger than others, absolutely. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, and that's going to be for so many reasons. There's going to be funding, there's going to be location, there's going to be your university being 1,000 years old. Like, there's so many reasons for it, but it's, at the end of the day, you just got to find what works for you.
Absolutely.
Next question. Oh, I mean, it's a question I ask all my guests, and no is a valid answer, but I don't think that's what it's going to be, because we've already had a chat about your activism, how it's, and even your studies, and how that is so informed by your lived experience. But again, if you feel like it, no is a valid answer. Have you experienced any instances of your disability, neurodivergence, proving helpful in a higher education setting?
Yes. So I'd say a big incident that really brought it home to me was, we had a guest lecturer came in to tell us about the Mental Health Act. Now, this lecture was amazing. You know, she was telling us some case studies of anonymised people and so on. But I asked permission to tell my story, because I think there's just something, I don't know, something more powerful about having a person in the room. I was also very keen to get that in, because quite often stories around the Mental Health Act, people being sectioned, there is a certain stereotype that we're not going to make a success of our lives. We're just going to be receiving services all our life rather than being a service provider. And the fact that I was able to sit there and say, look, I've been sectioned multiple times. I'm not about to start hiding it, because it's not a secret, it's not shameful. And I have faced a lot of barriers through my life because of that. But I'm now at uni. I'm doing, well. I'm getting really good grades, and I'm doing well in my career as well. And I probably wouldn't, well, I definitely wouldn't be able to do it if I hadn't survived. And the Mental Health Act, while it was deeply, deeply unpleasant, and the whole inpatient experience really is looking at, but I'm still breathing. And that is what it comes down to, that I'm still breathing. I'm still able to tell my story. I'm still able. And I found that is a thing that really does motivate me, because I feel, it sounds weird, but I kind of want all that stuff I went through. I want that to be for something.
Oh, no, that is important. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want all that suffering to have led towards something. And also, I'm very aware that a lot of people who are disabled, mentally ill, neurodivergent, whatever, are not able to speak up for themselves for whatever reason. And this is one of the reasons why I am very vocal. I like to stand up. I like to tell my story. I like to insist on things being fair, because there's a lot of people out there who are not getting that chance. I don't think there's much that could be more disempowering than being locked up against your will in a mental health ward, being told what medication to take, what time you have to eat, and told it's for your own good, when you've not committed a crime, you've not done anything to deserve it as such. And I think that experience of having absolutely no power has driven me now to make sure that any power or voice I can get hold of, I use that to help those who don't have a voice.
Yeah, and I think that motivates us both to do what we do, doesn't it? Absolutely. Like, obviously, I've never been sectioned. That's not a lived experience I have. I just had a bit of a crap time at uni, which is why this podcast exists. It's both coming from the same place, isn't it? Is that, like, there's a gap here that needs to be filled. Let's fill it. And I think that's so massively important. I wonder, in general, do you think that, because obviously this is going to inherently come from a place of needing a strong sense of justice and realizing, this system is broken. It needs to improve. Do you think that with your neurotype, obviously autistic people can have quite a strong sense of justice. Do you think your neurotype has aided you with that as well?
Absolutely. I've got a bit of a habit of reading through policies and finding out where they are inconsistent and pointing it out to people. And I've been told a few times, like, I pointed it out to big, powerful CEOs and things like that, ministers, all sorts. And people said, why are you saying that to them? I said, because they need to know, they need to sort it, surely. Like, if I was, sat there in my expensive suit at the end of a massive table, where did they get those massive tables? I don't know. But yeah.
Massive table shop.
Yeah. But I was sat there in my expensive suit at the end of a massive table, and there was something going on in the organisation that I was leading that was hurting people. I would want to know about it. It's giving the respect to the people in charge that they want to know, and they want the best for the people that they're serving, or the customers, or whatever situation they're in.
It's such a weird one, isn't it? Because it's duty of care, but they're paying. It's another minefield.
It is.
It is. I mean, in a way, I think we're more similar. I think I'm learning having this conversation than I realised, because it's very much, I do the same thing. It's like, I don't really particularly care who you are. If something's wrong, you probably should know. And I wonder if it's like, I feel like it's because I see less of a social hierarchy and people are people, and I kind of half attribute that to my neurotype. I don't know whether that is what it is, but it would make sense.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I don't know if, because I'm very left-wing as well, so I don't know if it's that.
These damn neuroqueers running in and
It is, that's it, we're going around. And it sounds like such a massive platitude, but I don't know how many people actually believe it, that people are just people, whether they're someone who is needing help to have personal care, or whether it's somebody who's sat there on a 6-figure salary. We're all people and we all want the best for whatever's going on in our lives. We all want to do a good job or whatever that job is. And it's why I've said, I know I'm skipping ahead a bit into student politics, but I've said start at the students' union properly. I'm making a massive thing about transparency and about, if I'm doing something wrong, I want you to tell me. I want to know that, and I will say thank you for pointing out that I've made a mistake, because then I can mend it. If I don't know I've made a mistake, how can I mend it?
Yeah, and also because obviously I did a lot of student voice as well. It was through COVID, but it was a lot of I'd see 8 department reps were under me, for example, and one of them really sweetly was like, "Oh, you know, the SU didn't tell you this big thing that's going on in my department and your faculty," and I was like, "I'm really sorry, sweetheart, but no, that was your job." People aren't going to hear everything, and if it's important, just go straight to them. Don't use the system that they're a part of, because sometimes, you know, SUs and unis can be spread very thin and things can just get dropped. And if it is super important, definitely do go to them now.
Yeah, that's it. And it might be that, say, I go to someone in leadership and say, hold on a minute, this isn't quite, you know, what's going on here, you're not doing your job. And they say, oh no, there's this bit of information you didn't know. And when they tell me that bit of information, oh, actually, yeah, you are doing your job. My apologies, carry on. The information is so important. I mean, to me, within a university and a students' union, it seems obvious that we will be all about information and sharing knowledge, but it doesn't seem to be happening.
That the progress is small, but it'll happen. We've got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure we can fit everything in. I won't say let's go to rapid fires. Maybe a concise fire, because the questions I'm about to ask you, it's building on stuff we've already spoken about. So I think it's just a little bit of breathing room, just, you know, couple of minutes for each, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, just to say if you have anything extra. So I want to ask, obviously you started at the SU in that voluntary position. You did a lot of advocacy work.
So it wasn't voluntary, it was paid.
Oh, it was paid. Okay, so you came in, you did the work, and you obviously saw what was going on there. Was there anything else to add on how you got involved in SUs and student politics?
So I've always been very kind of into democracy, unions, politics, all that stuff anyway. Before I decided to come back to UCLan, a big part of my decision was I went on the Student Union website and looked at the minutes of the meetings, because I had been at that university before. I was not going to be joining a university that did not have an active student union. That was absolutely out of the question. And I saw the minutes and I'm like, yeah, could do a bit more detail, but this'll do. Let's start. Yeah. I actually started work as a community organizer before my course started, and it was very much part of what I was doing. So it was almost an obvious choice to me because of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who isn't going to be organising people and trying to sort things out.
It's just part of who you are. It's kind of always has been. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, very much so.
So obviously, I wish we had more time to talk about this, but I'm also happy with the conversation we had today.
Amazing.
You are coming in as a student rep for governance at Lancashire SU, which I don't personally agree with this as a part-time, not very well paid position where they expect you to essentially, I believe, do pretty much the same workload as an SU president with fewer resources and less time. Yeah, cool. I'm going to ask you just for a bullet pointed manifesto, I guess. I'm sure you did plenty of that during elections. What plans do you have in your upcoming role as the student rep for governance at Lancashire SU?
So my big thing, and it was on all my posters, is that every student who is in this university belongs at this university and has a right to feel like they belong at the university and as part of the SU. Everything else comes under that. So I want to bring in a radical transparency. I want to bring in radical accountability. I really do intend to push to bring back full-time sabbatical officers. I can't promise one way or the other, but that is a big thing because I feel not only is it not fair on the students to not have full-time representation, it's not fair on the reps themselves. I'm going into a role, I'm going to be paid minimum wage for 14 hours a week. This is not enough to do the job. I know I'm going into a role that is not going to be good for me on a personal level, but I'm also not someone who can shut up, so I'm going to do it. But it's also not good for the students on a national stage. So part of the role of a students' union officer is to represent the interests of those students nationally, whether within the NUS or within national and local politics. Requiring the reps to be part-time and also be studying for a degree does massively reduce their capacity.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be walking into rooms where the other officers are full-time. I'm already, as I touched on before, at a bit of disadvantage because sometimes our university gets looked down on a little bit. So not only am I coming from a university that's less prestigious, I'm also walking in as a part-time person that doesn't really have a title that anyone's ever heard of. Do you know what I mean?
It's like big quote marks SU president.
Yeah. So it's going to be difficult when I'm walking into a room and saying, look, we need to consider the issues that face the students at this university. It's going to be harder to get my voice heard precisely because of that lack of, and I'm not someone for big titles, like we said before, people are people. But sometimes it helps open doors.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I wish you the best of luck and I hope that you can keep me updated. I'm going to just pop on to this last question because we are a touch over time. So in 1 or 2 sentences, if you please, I'm aware that we've covered a lot today. It might be hard to do. I hope you can. With everything we've spoken about today, obviously in the past, in the present, with a lot of SU stuff and accessibility and, different lived experiences from yourself throughout at one institution over a period of time is a very rare thing. And I really appreciate you coming on and giving your time. If we were to take everything that we've spoken about today, what is one key takeaway that you would like listeners to remember from your story?
That you do have a voice. That's it. Occasionally it's harder. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's going to be an easy battle at all, but you do have a voice and please use it if you can. If you have the capability and the capacity, please do use your voice.
I'm going to leave it there. Alicia, thank you so much. I'm just going to close the show up. So HE Enabled is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. If you wish to join the Patreon, it's only £1 a month. You get early episodes if and when they are available. So if that is something you would be interested in, definitely go have a look. If you fancy a one-off payment, for whatever reason, you can also buy me a coffee in the episode description. And otherwise, if you want to be a guest, drop me a line. There's also the link tree in the episode description as well, or just find me on socials. Amazing. Alicia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.